In the heart of early 20th century Vienna, a city pulsing between science, philosophy, art, and the unconscious, Gustav Klimt created one of the deepest and most enigmatic works of his career, Death and Life, Tod und Leben. Born in 1862 in Baumgarten, Austria, and deceased in 1918 in Vienna, Klimt was a central figure of the Viennese secession movement, an artist who broke with academic rules to explore symbolism, sensuality, and the most intimate drives of the human being. In Death and Life, conceived around 1910 and modified in 1915, Klimt achieved a synthesis between his characteristic decorative language and an existential meditation on the human condition. The work, nearly 2 meters wide, represents one of the oldest and most universal themes in art history, the confrontation between life and death. But unlike traditional representations that oppose these concepts as irreconcilable enemies, Klimt shows them coexisting on the same plane, linked by a silent tension. On the left stands Death, portrayed as a skeletal figure, cloaked in a dark robe adorned with crosses and geometric motifs. On the right, Life, symbolized by a group of naked bodies entwined in a collective embrace, surrounded by ornamental fabrics and warm colors. The composition, as simple as it is powerful, seems to stop time, two worlds separated by a narrow void, observing one another without touching, without struggle, without fear. Klimt began working on this painting around 1908, at the height of his artistic maturity. Vienna was then living through a unique cultural climate. The music of Mahler and Schoenberg, the writings of Freud, the buildings of Otto Wagner and Adolf Loos, the architecture of modernism, and the rise of psychoanalytic thought all converged in an atmosphere of change and spiritual crisis. Within that context, Klimt's painting moved away from narrative representation and delved into the symbolic. In Death and Life, the artist synthesized years of aesthetic and philosophical exploration, feminine sensuality, the biological cycle, Byzantine ornamentation, and spirituality without religion. The first version of the work was exhibited at the International Exhibition in Rome in 1911, where it won first prize. At that time, the background was golden, a legacy of his celebrated golden phase in which gold represented divinity, eternity, and desire. Yet 4 years later, in 1915, Klimt returned to the canvas and profoundly altered it. He replaced the golden background with a more neutral greenish-gray softened contrasts and added details to Death's robe. With that change, the painting gained emotional depth and psychological realism. The divine gold gave way to the earthly tone of time, and the celestial glow transformed into human silence. Today, this final version is housed in Vienna's Leopold Museum, carefully protected behind glass that paradoxically saved it in 2022 from a protest act by climate activists who threw liquid over it. In structure, the painting reveals Klimt's compositional genius. On the left, Death rises vertically, covered in a dark blue mosaic robe, gaze fixed, skull-like face. His presence is inevitable, but serene, more watchful than aggressive. On the right, a compact group of human beings, a mother with her baby, a sleeping young woman, an old man, an embracing couple, swirls in a dream of flesh and color. The fabrics around them, decorated with flowers, circles, and spirals, evoke both fertility and pleasure. There is no violence or fear. There is stillness, tenderness, surrender. Death observes, life sleeps. Neither dominates the other, both exist. The symbolism of the work is immense. First, it represents the entire human cycle: birth, youth, maturity, and old age. Each figure is a link in the chain of existence. The mother holds the newborn, the couple embodies erotic union, the sleeping old man represents the nearness of the end. All ages merge into a single vital mass, a collective organism wrapped in ornamental fabric that, beyond its beauty, symbolizes the continuity and interconnectedness of life. Opposite them, Death holds a staff, like a guardian or priest patiently waiting to claim his share. The crosses adorning his robe have been interpreted in many ways as Christian references to resurrection, as funerary symbols, or as signs of the balance between opposites. The fact that Death is dressed in blue and violet, colors associated with night, melancholy, and the spiritual, reinforces the idea of transition rather than annihilation. The living, by contrast, bathe in warm tones, pinks, yellows, oranges, that represent vitality, desire, and passion. Between both realms lies a thin, dark strip, a void that separates yet unites, the threshold where life turns into death. Klimt was always a painter of sensuality, even when addressing metaphysical themes. In Death and Life, eroticism remains present, though sublimated. The naked bodies, the curves, the touching skins convey pleasure and vulnerability at once. In his aesthetic universe, sexuality was not taboo but a manifestation of vital energy. Death thus appears as its inevitable counterpart, the other face of desire, the culmination of the natural cycle. Indeed, some critics have seen in this painting a symbolic reinterpretation of the myth of Eros and Thanatos, the life instinct and the death instinct intertwined in eternal balance. During his lifetime, Klimt was a controversial artist. His university paintings were deemed scandalous for their eroticism and pagan symbolism. His Judith and Dana were labeled indecent. Yet Death and Life avoided direct scandal. Instead of provocation, it offered contemplation. Still, his vision of the female nude as a universal symbol of life continued to challenge the moral codes of bourgeois Vienna. In a society that concealed sexuality and aging, Klimt placed them at the center of the canvas, beside the unflinching face of death. Over time, interpretations of the work have changed. In pre-war Vienna, it was read as a memento mori, a warning about human fragility. After the First World War, it took on a more tragic tone, as an unconscious prophecy of the coming disaster. In the 20th century, psychoanalysts reinterpreted it through Freudian theory, death representing the unconscious, the repressed that haunts consciousness, while the group of the living symbolizes the collective ego, content in its illusions. For others, the painting expresses reconciliation, the acceptance that death is not an enemy but a companion. Klimt's technique in Death and Life combines the figurative with the abstract. The human figures, though idealized, possess tangible corporeality. Meanwhile, the ornamental backgrounds and geometric patterns create a dreamlike suspension. His brushwork is meticulous, but not academic. The contours are soft, chromatic transitions, delicate, and color shapes, emotion rather than volume. Here lies his modernity. He sought not imitation of reality, but translation of an inner state. There are no records of problematic restorations, but there is evidence of its material evolution. The background change in 1915 markedly altered its reading. The original gold made the scene seem supernatural. The later greenish-gray anchored it in a more human dimension. The modification mirrored the artist's mood as he witnessed the outbreak of war and an increasing awareness of the world's fragility. Paradoxically, history itself has symbolically restored the painting. Its endurance through time and resistance to modern assaults have turned it into an emblem of permanence. In 2022, when a group of environmental activists splashed black ink onto the glass protecting the painting, the act sparked controversy. Some saw desecration. Others, a reminder of the same tension between life and death Klimt had portrayed. The painting suffered no harm, yet the incident revived debate about art's role amid contemporary crises. The taboo that Death and Life touches is not only death itself, but the awareness of our vulnerability. In a culture that glorifies youth and consumption, Klimt's work remains an uncomfortable mirror. It reminds us that life is fragile, ephemeral, sensual, and mortal. In that sense, the painting anticipates 20th century existentialist thought, the acceptance of finitude as the condition for living fully. The picture can also be read as a social allegory. The intertwined bodies represent human community, a group clinging to itself, unaware of the abyss surrounding it. Death, watching from the shadows, can be seen as a metaphor for collective destiny, for the threat that looms when civilizations forget their fragility. Thus, Klimt unites the individual and the universal, the intimate and the historical, in a single pictorial gesture. Compared with other works of its time, Death and Life stands out for its calm tone, where Munch screamed in the scream, where Sheely writhed in anguish, Klimt offered serenity. His death does not terrify, his life does not despair. It is the silent acceptance of a natural balance. Perhaps that is why the painting still moves viewers more than a century later, because in a world that fears death and flees from old age, Klimt dared to gaze at both with love. The power of the work also lies in its ambiguity. Is death about to cross the void and touch the living, or does he simply regard them with tenderness? Are the living aware of his presence, or do they dream unconsciously? There are no answers, and that uncertainty is precisely what makes it eternal. The viewer, in contemplating it, becomes part of the dialogue. The painting confronts us with our own relationship to time, body, and mortality. From a philosophical point of view, Death and Life can be understood as a meditation on the unity of opposites. There is no life without death, nor death without life. Each side needs the other to exist. Klimt's art, blending sensuality and spirituality, gold and flesh, ornament and void, reflects this pantheistic vision of a universe where everything is connected. Death, far from being an enemy, is the boundary that gives existence its meaning. When Klimt died in 1918, victim of a stroke and the influenza pandemic, he left several works unfinished, but Death and Life remained his visual testament. Within it lies his entire universe: fascination with the body, passion for ornamentation, mystery of the soul, serenity before the end. His legacy was carried forward by later generations, from Egon Schiele to modern symbolists, who saw in his painting a doorway to the unconscious and the transcendent. Today, in the Leopold Museum, the painting stands majestic, surrounded by silence. Visitors gaze and feel, as then, the same unease, the presence of something immutable, the certainty that beauty and death can coexist in the same space. In its stillness, Death and Life continues to speak to us with an ancient human voice, reminding us that all existence is a brief interval between two silences, and that art, like life itself, only finds meaning when contemplated with love and without fear. Thus, more than a painting, Death and Life is a visual prayer, not a lament, but an acceptance. A hymn to balance between the ephemeral and the eternal, between flesh and spirit, between the life that blooms and the death that beholds it. And perhaps that is its true greatness, teaching us that death does not extinguish life, but completes it, that to live is to learn to die, and that within that learning lies the purest form of beauty. The work Death and Life can be considered, in many ways, Gustav Klimt's philosophical testament, the summary of a life devoted to exploring beauty, desire, fragility, and destiny. It is not merely another painting in his career, but a spiritual declaration, the acceptance of the complete cycle of human existence. Here, the artist no longer exalts only feminine sensuality, as in his golden works, but embraces the totality of human experience from birth to dissolution. The theme is not tragedy, but unity, not fear, but understanding. Klimt, who throughout his life was branded a provocateur for his eroticism and defiance of bourgeois morality, reveals himself here as a silent philosopher of the soul. The composition, which at first glance appears simple, hides a carefully calculated symbolic structure. Death, isolated on the left, embodies awareness of the end, but also the patience of fate. He neither lunges nor threatens. He observes with a calm that unsettles. His fixed gaze, barely perceptible grimace, and symbol-covered body make him a psychological rather than physical figure. He represents the inescapable certainty that accompanies us, the shadow walking beside us from the first breath. In contrast, the group of the living appears as a spiral of flesh and affection, a knot of bodies protecting one another. The circular arrangement suggests a cosmic womb, a matrix containing all forms of love, maternal, erotic, filial, and spiritual. The whole is not chaotic. It is ordered by color rhythm and line flow. This tension between decorative order and emotional impulse is one of the masterstrokes of Klimt's art. The Viennese artist understood that ornamentation was not mere adornment but a form of thought. Every spiral, every flower, every chromatic mosaic acts as a symbol, a living cell in the fabric of the universe. In death and life, the ornaments enveloping the living seem to protect them yet also imprison them. They are the web of existence, the destiny surrounding us with its beauty and its inescapable limit. Death, by contrast, with his geometric robe, belongs to a colder, more rational, more austere order. Thus, the painting becomes a dialogue between the organic and the structural, between flesh and sign, between chaos and form. The work can also be read as a synthesis of Viennese thought of the time, influenced by Freud, by the psychology of the unconscious, and by Nietzsche's vitalist philosophy. In that context, death represents not punishment but release. Life is not paradise, but a constant struggle for pleasure, connection, and continuity. Klimt translates those ideas into images: death, individual and solitary; life, collective and loving. Both need each other, both gaze at each other, both coexist on the same canvas. The space between them, that narrow green-gray void, is where the viewer stands, suspended between awareness of finitude and desire to remain. The figure of the mother with the child at the center of the living group deserves special attention. She is the symbolic nucleus of the painting, the beginning and end of everything. The sleeping child held in protective arms embodies innocence and perpetual rebirth. Around him gather the other figures, forming a silent chorus celebrating life's continuity. Yet his sleep has something final about it. It could be the rest of one who has not yet awakened, or the dream of one who has already departed. That ambiguity reinforces the idea that birth and death are, in essence, the same act in opposite directions. Technical studies of the canvas reveal that Klimt worked layer upon layer, modifying body positions, lightening tones, and altering contrasts to achieve an almost musical balance. The visual rhythm feels like a symphony of curves and lines, where each body is a note within a larger chord. Color use follows no naturalistic logic. The greenish tones of the background and the pinkish hues of the flesh create a sensory dialogue, conveying harmony more than realism. This way of composing with color as emotional language would deeply influence later artists, such as Egon Schiele and Oskar Kokoschka, who inherited from Klimt the boldness to turn emotion into form. Over the decades, Death and Life has evolved from a painting admired in art salons to a philosophical mirror of humanity. During the World Wars, it was seen as prophetic warning, in the latter half of the 20th century as a hymn to life's resilience, and in the 21st as meditation on time, ecology, and interdependence. Each era has found its own reflection within it. In 2022, when climate activists symbolically attacked it to denounce planetary destruction, many saw irony in destiny. The work that spoke of life and death again became the stage for that struggle. The painting also invites reflection on the relationship between art and spirituality. Klimt, never religious in a dogmatic sense, built in his canvases an aesthetic religion, a system of symbols where beauty replaces faith and contemplation takes the place of prayer. In Death and Life, that religion reaches its peak. Death is no longer a divine punishment, but a natural law. Life is no longer a trial, but a celebration. To look upon the work is to take part in a silent rite, a reminder that existence, with all its pain and splendor, is sacred. Today, visitors to the Leopold Museum often linger for long minutes before the painting. Many cannot explain why it moves them. Perhaps the serenity of the ensemble, the closeness of the bodies, or the peace emanating from the scene. That emotional rather than intellectual response proves that Klimt achieved what he sought, to make art a direct experience of the soul. The viewer does not contemplate death from outside. They feel it. They do not observe life as spectacle. They recognize it within themselves. More than a century after its creation, Death and Life still speaks with an eternal voice. In its colors, silence, and balance beats a truth modern humanity often forgets. Beauty cannot exist without fragility. Every embrace already contains a farewell, and every ending is in fact a hidden beginning. The painting offers no answers or consolations, but a deep certainty: living fully is only possible when the shadow of death is accepted. In that acceptance, lies the wisdom Gustav Klimt sought to bequeath to the world. Thus, Death and Life is not only a masterpiece of Viennese art or a symbol of modernism, but a universal meditation on the human condition. It is a mirror reminding us, with the delicacy of a sigh, that as long as consciousness of time endures, as long as we keep loving and fearing, life and death will continue to dance together, face to face, forever united on the same canvas.